Hello and welcome to the second episode of 2024. It is the 10th of the 1st, 2/4. I hope you guys are well. With me as always, I have my co-hosts, Shez and Baxty. How are we doing, chaps?
Quiet day today, nothing major happening. I'm all good. Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you're doing. The Rocky's back, isn't he? The Rocky's
two
back.
Episodes.
Mate, it had to be done. I wanted to do it last episode, bruv. The Rocky's back and in full effect, and he's going to dethrone Roman Reigns. Acknowledge me. Lads, shall we talk about some F1? Guenther Steiner has just been sacked, aka his contract has been let to expire. Baxty, I'm going to come to you first, sir. What do you make of that news?
Chaos. Absolute chaos. I mean, we're talking about the team that finished 10th in the Constructors' Championship, and it's like, why is this big news? Well, this is the third, at the time of his departure, which was today, he was the third longest serving team principal, which that honour now passes to Mike Crack, who's been there for 2 years. There's a crazy stat for you. I was shocked but not surprised, because I think despite the fact that Guenther's been there from the very start, when you read into the actual way the team works, clearly some massive issues that have been going on. Gene Haas doesn't really want to fund the team. Guenther's realised that perhaps the business model that they had now needs to change, and they need to invest more into the team. Gene Haas doesn't want to do that, and it's been an irreconcilable differences between them. The way that Haas operate is very odd, with the fact that they basically have 3 bases of operation. They've got the one in Italy, the one in Banbury, and then obviously now the one in the States, which is barely ever used anyway. Guenther wanted to streamline everything. Gene Haas said no. Clearly, the new team principal has said, "I can work on this. Don't worry, I can work within this new system." Komatsu, and Guenther's gone. Which I'm sure, if you listen very carefully, you will hear Netflix producers crying their eyes out at losing their biggest star for this year's recording.
This is true, Baxty. Shez, have Haas made the right decision in allowing or in not renewing Guenther Steiner, Haas team principal's contract?
I mean, I thought the announcement was interesting, and the way that it's been reported in the press is interesting as well. That it's Steiner has walked away. I don't think we can really understate how massive that is for Haas itself, because I think that the way that Haas have come into F1 is that Steiner basically pitched the model to Gene Haas, and Gene Haas has been the money man. But the day-to-day running of it and the actual the core of the team has been Guenther Steiner. It's been him that sets the way that they operate. It was him that proposed the part sharing model with Ferrari in the first place. It was him that got the money in via Gene Haas initially, and then he was instrumental in getting all of the other failed sponsorship deals over the line as well. So, Rich Energy, Uralkali, all of those, that was him just trying to keep the team going. So for him to leave, that it's like, it's like Ron Dennis leaving McLaren. It's that kind of level of we're talking about teams at different ends of the spectrum, but it's that kind of impact that you're looking at.
That's the comparison, by the way, Shez.
Yeah,
Ron Dennis was on the tip of my tongue, absolutely, bro.
But I don't see this as I mean, perhaps it is. Gene Haas has said, look, I think this team can be more efficient, can be run better, can have better results, and it's your fault. And I'm sure Guenther Steiner sort of turned around and said, look, since 2016, you've put in minimal cash. That's why I've had to go to play to sponsors like Rich and Uralkali to get any money. And we're not going to go forwards if you don't give me more money. And I think Haas has just said that if there's somebody on board that can do this for less, and can give me better results, I'll go with that person.
It's crazy, bro. Sometimes I think that F1 teams can be F1 team owners can be a bit too cutthroat in their appointing and sacking, almost like football, right, Baxty? Is this the right decision from Gene Haas in allowing this to expire, who said, by the way, that I'd like to start by extending my thanks to Guenther for all his hard work over the past decade, and I wish him well for the future. Moving forward as an organisation, it was clear we need to improve our on-track performance. In appointing Ayao Komatsu as team principal, we fundamentally have engineering at the heart of our management. Baxty, to that you respond, how's right or wrong?
Oh, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how this all plays out on track. I must correct myself. I think I said Tomatsu when it's actually Komatsu, so I do apologise to the new team principal of Haas for mispronouncing his name. It's an intriguing one because Komatsu's been the technical head for years, and one of the biggest problems Haas had last year is their updates fundamentally failed. So essentially, the guy that was in charge of the technical updates that happened, the big one in Austin that just completely failed them and basically cost them the chance of finishing at least P8 or P9 in the constructors. He's now been promoted into the team principal role, and Guenther has gone. So you do maybe think maybe the technical direction of Haas is definitely in question. But I think one thing that has been noted is that we are heading into an era of more technically minded team principals. I mean, you look at Andreas Stella moving up at McLaren. You look at Arriva Bene at not Arriva Bene. I can't remember his name. The guy at Stake. He was an engineer within the team that was internally promoted as well. So like these kind of more technically minded team principals coming in, to lead the teams, because the technical side is so important. I mean, it's always been important, but it seems to be more important now given these ground effect rules, and the landscape of Formula One management is beginning to change as well. So yeah, it's I don't know. I think the biggest mistake that Haas have always made is the underinvestment, and it seems that Gene Haas wants to keep it that way. And Komatsu has said, "I can operate with the model that we have," whereas Guenther, we know he's not a stupid man. He understands how the sport works, and he was trying to take Haas more towards where the other teams are going. Look at the comparison. Look at Aston Martin. This is the perfect comparison because Lawrence Stroll has got a hold of that team, and he said, right, what do we need to do to be better? Okay, this factory, it's not up to scratch. We're going to build a new one. And then we're going to build new wind tunnels. We're going to go and become an engine partner with Honda. I'm going to invest in this team. I'm going to give us the best possible opportunity to compete, to win races, and then to win championships. Red Bull are looking to get a new wind tunnel as well. They invested, they got the powertrains as well. Whereas this model that worked in 2016 of, light budgets and, different factories and everything else, you can't do that anymore. You've got to have proper investment. And Gene Haas clearly feels that the less is more approach is better, and maybe it will work I don't know. We'll have to see, but I think this is a risk for Haas, and it could backfire massively.
It absolutely could well backfire. I want to talk to Ayao Komatsu because I know a little bit about him. Obviously, he's very technical, very intelligent guy. But in this area, we've talked to it a lot, chaps, that you want to, as a team principal, you can't just parlay, Andreas Seidel, by the way, but you can't just parlay technical gifts and nous into a team principal role, right? Is that not why most of them are, or some of them are failing at the moment? Rhetorical question. Shez, let me put this to you, bruv, because I think the performance hasn't been great, Ross. Haas in the Constructors' Championship over the last couple of years, 9th in 2019 and 2020. 2021, they moved up to 8th, finished in 10th and last in 2022, and 10th and last again on 12 points, Shez, in 2023, bruv. Even lack of investment notwithstanding, is that good enough for Guenther Steiner to keep his job, bruv? that performance that I've just read out.
No, but I think that's his team. That's his. Sure. If you want to say, oh, this is because of Guenther, then sure you can. But a couple of things about that. The first is that they still have those strong technical ties with Ferrari. Simone Rusta was deep within the engineering squad there. He's now left as well, gone to who knows where at the moment. So I don't think you can blame this fully on Guenther. They were using a model that was heavily reliant on Ferrari having a car that was competitive, and the parallels between how Ferrari had great qualifying pace and then middling race pace were mirrored by their customer team, essentially. But Haas are doing the same thing.
But Shez, Ferrari had a car that was at times, particularly in Q4 of last year, competitive. So is that not the final nail in Guenther Steiner's coffin then?
But I don't think they're going to have the same car. This is comparing Red Bull with AlphaTauri and Ferrari with Haas. It's that kind of model. That junior team is never going to have the same investment, the same interest, the same engineering talent within it that the mother team has. It's just never going to be that way. So you're always feeding off the scraps of what the mother team have done. My biggest takeaway from all of this is you've talked about the result, about the results in the constructors. I had a look at what Forbes's valuations were for all the Formula One teams in July of last year, and Haas is still valued at $780 million, right? That's still above. That was still above Williams in July. I don't think that's still going to be the same at the end of this year, but those two teams are a good comparison, I think, because where Williams could have gone under and done the same kind of thing, or carried on treading water in the way that Haas have, but they found an investment company that were willing to put in enough cash to do the things that they needed to do. They've been able to get a forward-thinking team principal, and the investment team behind Williams are happy to invest in the things that he's asking them to invest in. I think for Gene Haas, the person in charge is just a name. It doesn't, for him personally, I don't think it makes that much difference. Haas does what he needs them to do, which is promotes his machining company, and he needs to put in very little cash to get a decent amount of return. So
then why let Guenther go? Surely, if that's the MO,
I don't think
sure that's the MO.
But I think it's one of those. But I think this is a classic case of, was he pushed or did he go? Has Guenther just reached the end of his tether with this model and said, look, I can't run an F1 team if basically you're saying you're happy to be uncompetitive, or you think that you can run this on a tiny budget. I think his patience has probably run out at the same time that Gene Haas has said your results aren't good enough. I think those two heads have clashed, and they've gone, we can't really take this further forward.
I agree with what Shez just said, because I think that it seems to me that you've got Gene Haas clearly not happy with results. I mean, the team owner is never going to be happy with his team finishing in 10th place. I think he kind of accepted 2021 because that was basically determined before the season started. But also you've got the fact that you've got, Guenther wanted to take the team in a new direction and said, this model that we have doesn't work. And Gene Haas was like, no, we just need somebody to run it better. And clearly maybe you're not the guy to do that. And clearly Guenther no longer wanted to work within that model. So it was just probably easier for both of them to go, you know what, that's it, game over, see you later, bye-bye. So yeah, I think Shez has kind of hit the nail on the head there with that. I don't think Guenther was the problem at Haas. I think the problem at Haas is the model. It's the fact that they're trying to do this not on a budget per se, but they're trying to do it in a way that perhaps isn't as good as it could have been a few years ago, and they're not adjusting to that fact. I mean, how many times have we seen teams be like, "We have our philosophy." Toyota is the famous one. We've got our philosophy, and our philosophy is going to work, and yet it never works. So,
Oh, chaps, this is also negative so early into 2024 when I don't know, man. I just feel like, I feel like I got it wrong with the Ron Dennis compare. You know who I'd compare Guenther to? Eddie Jordan, bruv. You know those wheeler dealer types that were just trying to secure just one additional sponsorship just so that we can get over the line for like the next racing season. I don't know. I feel like, and plus he was such a big bloody personality. How much of Conor McGregor always used to talk about how much he contributed to the sale of UFC to IMWE or IMWG or whatever they're called. And he used to say 100% of it. I'm not sure that Guenther Steiner, that valuation that you just cited, Shez, how much of that is Guenther Steiner's appearances and him promoting cars and getting sponsors airtime via Netflix? I just don't think. It reminds me a little bit of Oscar Piastri just dipping off at the end of Alpine, right? At the end of 2 seasons ago, just saying, well, bouncing chaps. It doesn't feel fair somehow that Haas have gotten all this upside for the last couple of years on the back of Guenther Steiner, and then when come contract time now, it's like, all right then, let's move on to Ayao Komatsu.
Cameron, more than that, he's basically seen Haas through the lean times, right? He kept them going when they were going under. Made dodgy deals. Yeah, I totally get that Eddie Jordan comparison. He made the deals that the team needed to keep them on the grid, and limped them into this cost cap era where they're now making some money, and now he's had to go. It's shocking.
Rude. Just rude and no manners, isn't it? But again, maybe that's the sport that we love to talk so much about, Shez?
I would not be surprised if we see that Haas might be up for sale within a few months.
Oh, let's talk about it, Baxty.
Yeah, I mean, look, Andretti want to come in. F1 teams are a bit, we don't want to give up our slice of the pie, and then all of a sudden, if things aren't working at Haas, it's like, oh, Gene Haas might go, maybe I should sell up, and Michael Andretti can be there and just say, hello, I've got lots of money. Would you like to take my... And then all of a sudden, the other 9 teams can accept it because they're like, well, we're not losing our share of the pie. Not quite fulfilling what the FIA wanted, but the FIA granted the license to Andretti, or not granted that, well, gave them their approval to join Formula One. And then, that's been fulfilled. They are in Formula One and everyone's happy. Maybe the FIA are a bit miffed, but who knows? But then there's other teams as well that might potentially look to invest. You'd think maybe Lucky Sons would be interested. You think High Tech might be interested. You think Rodin would be interested as well. This is speculation, and I think the fact that they've made this change suggests that they're not wanting to sell up just yet. But if the traction continues and they continue trundling along at the back, Nico Hulkenberg will go. Kevin Magnussen won't want to hang around. Would Ollie Behrman, very highly rated junior at Ferrari, would he look at Haas and go, do I really want to be driving there? Or do I want to go maybe try my luck elsewhere? This is make or break for Haas now. They've made the gamble. It's got to work for them. If not, serious questions are going to be asked about the long-term viability of that team.
It's techie. Baxty, I don't disagree, man. Here's looking at you, Mr. Andretti. Here's looking at you, Andy and Steve of Lucky Sons. I think it's a good opportunity. And you know what? On the back of what was ostensibly a trough in the action in F1 the past couple of years, 700 million, if I'm an investment manager, looks quite cheap at the moment for an F1 team. Yeah, you're now on the brink of a Concord agreement that's going to be renegotiated and all numbers are going to go to the roof. No, Shez?
I think Haas doesn't care. I think for him, this is a cash cow. Like he puts in very little money and gets exposure and basically a profitable company out of it. If the model that Formula One have at the moment isn't the same as it was when teams like Minardi and Andrea Moda were trundling around for a season at the back, where a team owner was having to pump in millions and millions and millions just to get the car on the track. Now you've got established franchises where it's Formula One paying them the money to be there. It's that kind of value that having a car on the grid brings. So even if they're trundling around at the back uncompetitive, for Gene Haas, who from the outside at least seems to have very little interest in this team that he has his name on, I don't think it makes that much difference. And for that reason, like I don't, unless the valuation of the team goes up after the Concord agreement is signed, I'm not sure he's got any great reason to sell up.
Baxty, is this not the very... See, there's irony wrapped up in what you've just said there, Shez. Is this not exactly the type of team the F1 team principals are looking to prevent coming into F1? Like, we can't have like people just sitting there happy to collect 12 points a season, resting on your laurels. Baxty, let me pitch this at you to continue the analogy episode that we're having. Is Gene Haas not the Glazers? Is he not the equivalent to F1? Is he not the F1 equivalent of? Are we not?
Yeah,
that's what's going on.
He's not running the team into debt, which is what the Glazers did, and incurring a lot of debt on the club. But essentially minimal investment and still getting a massive return. It's. And actually, it probably benefits his other American motorsport teams massively, because they're like, oh, who are this Haas team? The one thing I would, and I've just had this thought, what is going to happen with the sponsors? Because a lot of those sponsors would have signed up because of Guenther. You think of the likes of Chipotle and MoneyGram and a couple of others that they've got, and you think they might honour their contracts, but think we're not seeing a lot of result here. We're trundling along at the back, and maybe we're not happy with what's going on here, and they might take their investment away from the team, and that would be killer as well. We're talking about Eddie Jordan wanting to get all these sponsors on the car. Guenther was instrumental in my view in getting those two specifically onto the team, and you lose that, they're in deep trouble. And I just hope that Gene Haas realizes that and goes, okay, well, I need to appoint somebody that can go out there and get those sponsorship deals to bring investment into the team if he's not prepared to do it himself.
So then, chaps, this is a very sad conversation now. It feels like we're losing one by one the last of the personality people in F1, right? In that, I mean, Eddie Jordan doesn't do his broadcast anymore, and Guenther Steiner is kind of like the heir apparent to the god tier level personality that was Eddie Jordan. I'll say this to you, Shez, let me picture you this way. Ayao Komatsu is the new Haas team principal. Do you think he is the guy to take Haas to the promised land? If not, who should they have appointed?
Wow, thanks for that question.
De nada.
Look, it depends on who's right in this equation, right? Is it that actually Guenther wasn't running the team well enough and it needed to be more efficient, and the problem wasn't the lack of investment, it was just the way that the team was run? If Gene Haas is correct in that assessment, then and Ayao Komatsu can do the business, then yeah, sure. But he doesn't seem like a Zach Brown to me, and he doesn't seem like a Andres Stella to me either. That he sort of falls in between those two. Why has he not been picked up by one of the bigger teams as a technical head up until now? I don't know. So the bottom line is I don't know enough about him. The fact that I'm having to read a profile about the guy before before we came on air tells you everything you need to know about how highly regarded he is within Formula One, right? from a technical point of view.
Fair.
And then from a commercial point of view, as you said, it wasn't him that was getting the money in. It wasn't Gene Haas putting the money in. It was Guenther Steiner. And just like Baxty said, how many of the current partners are going to sit there and go, well, this isn't what we signed up for. Who knows? Who should he have signed up? I don't know. I mean, they could, take your pick. Like there could have been anyone installed there. That they could have had. One thing I would like to say that it's nice to have a diverse hire. That somebody that
100.
isn't the same old. So that's good. Whether or not from a performance point of view, that's actually going to improve Haas. I don't know. My hunch is that it won't. My hunch is that they're still going to be 10th come the end of 2024. But who knows?
Here's what I say on Ayao Komatsu. So I worked once upon a time with one of his best friends. Ayao sounds, by all accounts, to be a brilliant racing mind and a very good, of good person, just a good guy. And I think, sadly for Ayao, on the F1 grid, nice guys have a history, especially a very recent history of finishing last, right? What Haas need, if we're going to assume that everything that we said about Gene Haas's objectives, running kind of like a very tight run ship, minimal capital investment, and just kind of getting a bit of visibility as far as his sponsorship, a la the Glazers and all of those other buds. If that's the MO, then I'm not sure Ayao is going to be able to plug that commercial gap, because he's not commercial, is he? He's a very much he's a tech head, a very good racing mind, strategically knows what's going on. Like, how are you now having him as the team principal who you're expecting to plug this massive gap on your bottom line, Gene Haas?
Well, this is why the commercial officer is now going to be huge for them, because McLaren are a perfect example. They lost Seidel as team principal because he went off and took a bigger job. Okay, well, Zach Brown was like, well, I still do the commercial stuff anyway. I can just put somebody more technical in as team principal. Stella did an incredible job last year. And Zach Brown, we all know the joke that he was putting more sponsors and then points on the car. But by the end of the season, they were laughing back at us. So Haas should look to McLaren and say, Zach owns the team. It is slightly different. But if we can find somebody that can go out there and do a good job commercially, somebody who could do a good job in that regard, and they'd be guaranteed to bring at least one pink sponsor, is Otmar. Maybe not as team principal, but he could be a good shout for a commercial. He knows how to get sponsors on cars. He's operated on small budgets. He's been there at the thick of it when teams have been in the shit, excuse my language, with Racing Point, Force India and all. He was all there then. So he could be somebody to come in and run the commercial side, though he may not want to do that. He may want to be a team principal again. I don't know.
That was going to be my next question, Baxi. Do you think Otmar would even look at that role? Really? I don't see him. I don't know, the type of guy he is, the type of mind that he is. I don't think he'd look at a role anything less than team principal. I don't think Otmar would be necessarily that interested, to be fair, particularly not at Gene Haas's team. What am I doing? Well, don't fancy that unless it's just for a paycheck. But I digress. Yeah, good luck, Ayao, man. He deserves it. He's a fantastic guy. That much is sure. But I just don't think. I don't know, chaps. Sometimes I'm trying to think. It feels at this point like it's a poison chalice, a function of a disconnect between like the C-suite execs and the guys on the ground, right? We want to do this, say them, and then on the other side they're saying that we want to produce a good racing team and make some points, but we need this, which is investment. And those C-suite guys are saying, well, we're not going to invest any more money, do the best with what you've got. And you know what I mean? Rock on a hard place. How about you take the Manchester United manager role as well, if we're talking poison chalices, man. It's chaos. Chaps, as we round third base, got T-minus 10 minutes. Can we answer some? Got a couple of questions in. Shall we answer some, chaps? Shall we answer some?
Yeah.
Right, let me get them up. Let me pull them up. Talk amongst yourselves in the meter. Oof, there's something that I was watching, fellas. Did it do with the questions first, and then I'll talk about something that I was listening to, courtesy of some chap called Shezinho, the Intercaller podcast again. It's killing me. If you like F1 and you like story and history, Intercaller podcast is F1 porn, I'm telling you. Okay, let's have a look. PG tips. Michael says, I'm going to pitch this one at you. How does the George Lewis dynamic do this year? Fighting words from George after last season's humiliation. Go where you will with that one, mate.
Yeah, all depends on the competitiveness of the car ultimately, doesn't it? I think in terms of the team pairing with the highest likelihood of there being some fireworks, I think that's probably the team. And I think we've talked about this in the past a few times about the best model to have to achieve a driver's crown result. And yeah, I mean, you kind of have to say that if they continue to be equal, and neither of them particularly show that they're pulling away from the other, whether that's George or Lewis, doesn't matter, and they're constantly taking points off each other, then unless Mercedes have created the car of all domination, I'd struggle to see them winning a driver's title this year. And you kind of have to say that Red Bull are probably not going to take their foot off the gas. So I think it'll be an interesting dynamic. I think they're probably the two closest in terms of pace. And I think that does cause problems. But I guess the one caveat to that is that they derive their pace in slightly different ways. Lewis is very much a race pace guy, and George is much better on a Saturday. Although how close they are on a Saturday is actually infinitesimally small. So
did you just say that, George, mate? Be careful you don't get cancelled over here, Shez. Did you just say George is much better on a Saturday?
I didn't say that.
Didn't you?
I said the difference was infinitesimally small.
I think that's what you said afterwards. We'll have to check. We'll have to do a VAR and check the tape.
Wait for everything to be taken out of context, Shez.
Yeah.
Don't you worry.
The internet and F1 Twitter is undefeated. I do Michael's question ever so slight disservice though. I think the main portion of his question, Baxty, and I'll pitch this at you. Does Toto drop the hammer on George Russell via cheeky team orders? He's going to let him know that he's second driver this year.
No, that's not how Toto operates. We've spoken about this on length on this podcast, that basically whoever is quicker and whoever is doing better in the championship will be the number one driver. If that's Lewis, it's Lewis. If it's George, it's George. I mean, last year there was nothing to gain from implementing team orders, really. Let's be honest. Mercedes, okay, were happy to get P2 in the constructors, but they weren't going to fight tooth and nail for it. Let's be frank. They're in the business of winning. If they're not winning a championship, they'll let Lewis and George race, and that's it.
I think that to a fault, maybe, Baxty.
Well, yeah, that's something again we've spoken about a lot. But I think
no name Singapore.
don't that. Don't you dare.
Come on.
No. So yeah, I don't think there'll be any team orders from race one. I mean, maybe if somehow Mercedes are in a championship fight and Lewis is the play, then yeah, obviously Toto will be like, sorry, George, you got to pay your dues. But I think right now, business as usual. George has got to up his game. He did make a lot of mistakes, but hopefully he's learned from that, and he seems like the kind of guy that will.
Baxi, let me pitch this one back at you, actually, because there's a clip that I was researching a video the other day, and there was a clip that I watched where Michael was talking about the need to be almost evil in terms of your team hierarchy, hence why you get Austria 2002 or whatever, right, between Barrichello and Michael. If Baxty, last year, this season just gone, if Mercedes were fighting tooth and nail with Red Bull and Max Verstappen, as they were in 2021, last year in 2023, do you make a different call at Singapore?
100%.
You make the call then. Okay, cool.
You make the call, yeah. If Lewis is fighting for the championship and Red Bull are having their off race, you move George Russell out of the way.
And does George listen, do you think?
That's the question. It's
chaos.
The one that hasn't been answered yet.
Bro, it's chaos.
I think...
it's such chaos.
I think he probably would have in that situation, but if it was P1 and P2, different matter.
I don't think, but it was. This is the thing, Max.
Well,
this is
yeah.
the issue. In his mind, it was P1 and P. It was P1 that he was fighting for. Plus, I would have loved to see Lewis go hard and try and put it on Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris that race. But I forget, if I put my bloody GR63 helmet on for a second, you rightly pointed out that weekend that George had been the fastest by miles all weekend. So crash or no crash at the end, it's like, well, you got to give that fella a chance to have a go for himself, right?
When it's not for a championship, though, that doesn't matter. All that goes out the window. When you're fighting for scraps and Red Bull are having an off weekend, yeah, you can do that. But
I think this is where Mercedes might struggle if they're able to mount a challenge.
They did it in 2018. They showed how ruthless they could be when Bottas has dominated the whole of the Russian Grand Prix, and then they say, "There, Seb's a little bit too close behind. Move over." And they did it to Bottas when they didn't need to, and they still did it.
But that's a different. I think that is a sort of Rubens Barrichello kind of move, right? Because Rubens was never going to be, at the same level as Michael.
He wasn't the future.
Yeah, but my thing with George is right now George is so in his own head about this whole thing. Like he feels like he has to prove that he's better or at least as good as Lewis. Whereas Lewis is sitting there chilling, going, "Right, this car isn't it? It's okay. I'll come back next season."
And Shez, is that a strength or a weakness, bruv? Is George the type of man that can use that to propel him onto future great seasons? Or do you think it could potentially erode him this season?
There has to be a balance, right? There has to be a balance there. And the problem for me at the moment with George is that he's too far over in the getting in his own head about it. That's why you get the incidents like you had in Singapore, or in Canada. Those are his fault. They happened because he was trying to chase a result. And he was trying to show that, look, it's me, I'm the man, right? And that's fine. You should do that. You should try and maximize your results the whole time. But if it spills over into mistakes, that's where the balance comes in. Where the balance comes in.
Is it useful? Bloody Noah. As we round third base, chaps, let me pitch this one at you from Rainmaker. Polish, thank you so much for your comment, but I feel like we've already addressed that in the Guenther speeches earlier on. Rainmaker, legend, friend of the channel, says, probably too early for this, but silly season demands it. Baxty, is Ferrari repeating its egregious 2022 mistakes of not designating Leclerc as a number one driver? Discuss.
I'll have to be quick.
Yes
Not yet, but I think at the end of the season, Charles was starting to assert himself. I think Charles will probably assert himself as number one on pace, particularly if that Ferrari's quick. And I think, particularly if he signs this contract that seems to have been going on for about 50 years, trying to get that signed. So, yeah, I think within a few races, unless Carlos has really upped his game, Charles will be number one driver.
Shez, yes or no answer, sir?
I think yes. Yeah. The big difference being that Fred Vasseur is there now versus Mattia Binotto, and I think Charles got the pace. He's got the guy in the back room. I think it's a done deal.
Here's what I'll say to that very quickly, Rainmaker, Shez and Baxty. You can't be anointed number one status if you don't drive, behave, and manage a season nor a race like a number one driver. And on that bombshell, fellas. Yes, Shez, you've got to go to work, bruv. I would allow you the right to return, but we're gonna have to discuss it another day. It's weird how these episodes keep ending in Charles Leclerc. We've got one looming, haven't we? Catch up Charles Leclerc accrual coming soon on the Shakedown podcast. That has been another episode. Like, comment, subscribe if you're on the YouTubes. If you are listening on a podcasting platform, do us a favour, leave a review, por favor, between now and next time. As always, same time, same place next week. But remember to look, but never stare.